It's a grey January day in Paris, and a crowd has gathered along Canal Saint-Martin. But as people stare into the dark brown depths below, the waters slowly empty, uncovering secrets that have been kept hidden for many years. And when the bottom of the 200-year-old canal emerges, a truly bizarre side of the city is revealed. When authorities drained this 200-year-old canal, what they found at the bottom was extraordinary. Could Napoleonic treasures be hidden beneath the surface? The canal was certainly quite old. It had begun its life in 1802, when approximately 550,000 people lived in Paris, and the population continued to grow. Napoleon I hoped, therefore, that the canals that brought fresh water to the city would help prevent the spread of disease. Thus, in the 2 decades that followed, 3 canals were dug throughout the city. Collectively, they stretch more than 80 miles across Paris. The Canal Saint-Martin is probably the most famous of the 3, connecting the 108-mile Canal de l'Ourcq with the long, lazy flow of the Seine. The Canal Saint-Martin begins in the Bassin de l'Arsenal near the Seine, before traveling underground beneath the Place de la Bastille. Does that name sound familiar? Probably because it was the site of a prison that was stormed during the French Revolution. Then the waters emerge near the Place de la République before heading north towards the Bassin de la Villette. And there, the Canal Saint-Martin joins the Canal de l'Ourcq and the Ourcq River. In total, then, Canal Saint-Martin covers about 3 miles from the center of Paris, meaning there was a lot of water for the workers to empty. Originally funded by a tax on wine, it historically brought trade and fresh water to the city. In its heyday, the canal also brought building materials and food to Parisians. Today, however, the canal is more popular as a leisure destination for locals and visitors. Paris's wealthy young bohemians can often be seen gathering on its banks and in outdoor cafes, while the picturesque bridges are a magnet for tourists exploring the city. Over time, in fact, the canal has become an iconic symbol of the city. It inspired painters such as the British impressionist Alfred Sisley. Over the years, the Waterway has also appeared in numerous films, including the 2001 classic Amélie. See if you can spot it next time you watch. But, rather inevitably, nearly 200 years of operation have taken their toll on the canal. So, officials make an effort to empty it every 10 to 15 years. This way, they can remove debris that has found its way to the bottom. And while there are usually a few little treasures to be found, workers in January 2016 were in for a shock. The last time the canal was drained was 2001, when authorities recovered around 40 tons of waste from the water. They also discovered a car, yes, really. Washing machines, gold coins and 2 75mm World War I shells. Since then, the area around the Canal Saint-Martin has become famous for its nightlife, with young people flocking to the once exclusive neighborhood. Some people were worried, however, that these revelers would bring even more trash into the waterway. And in 2016 it was time to find out if they had. Preparations for the mammoth job of emptying the canal began on January 4. The project would take 3 months and involve moving about 3 million cubic feet of water. It would also cost the city over $10 million, a lot of money, but it had to be done. First, workers drained the water from the canal until only 20 inches remained. Next, it was time to evacuate the fish. For 3 days, the team rushed to catch bream, trout and carp living in the muddy waters, transporting them to safety in another section of the waterway. Then, on January 7, the rest of the water was emptied from the canal, and its secrets were finally revealed for the first time in 15 years. What was exposed at the bottom amazed the witnesses, who had gathered on the canal walkways to get a closer look. Much of the trash at the bottom of the canal was the kind you'd probably expect. Glass bottles, shopping bags and traffic cones, for example. Some of them, though, well, it left locals perplexed as to how these things ever ended up in the water. Among the most common items revealed as water levels dropped were bicycles, particularly those from the city's Vélib rental system. Launched in 2007, this program had brought approximately 14,500 bicycles to the streets of Paris. Unfortunately, however, many of them seem to have met an unfortunate fate. It's like some kind of strange underwater treasure, one witness, Mark, told The Guardian. I just can't believe the amount of velibs in there. I guess they were stolen and thrown away later. It's bizarre. But bicycles weren't the only strange things to find their way to the bottom of the canal. Even more incredibly, a couple of motorbikes were also revealed as the waters continued to fall. How did such expensive pieces of equipment end up in the canal? The truth may never be known, and there were other mysteries waiting to be discovered, too. Alongside the bicycles and motorbikes there were shopping trolleys, chairs, rubbish bins and suitcases, all strewn across the muddy surface. There were some oddities, too. A ghetto blaster-style music player, for example, and even an abandoned toilet. Together, they painted a fascinating picture of life along and under the canal. "This is Paris," commented spectator Bernard. "It's dirty. And apparently it's only getting worse. Last time, I don't remember seeing so much rubbish," he continued. "I despair. The young people are using it as a dustbin." But despite this, is there hope for the future of Canal Saint-Martin? Well, with the waste problem laid bare for all to see, the authorities took the opportunity to speak out. If everyone helped and avoided throwing anything into the water, Deputy Mayor Celia Blall told the Mail-in line, "We might be able to swim the canal in a few years. Rather her than us." But the St. Martin Canal isn't the only murky waterway in Europe hiding some curious secrets. In 19th century London, authorities ordered the dredging of the River Thames. And beneath its sewage-filled surface, workers discovered something that hadn't seen the light of day in 2,000 years. The story begins in Victorian England, when the country's capital was home to around 3.5 million people. 10 years before discovery, in 1858, the Great Stink had turned the banks of the Thames into a horror show, with the hot climate exacerbating the stench of human and industrial waste to almost unbearable levels. Wary of the disease's spread, authorities began to focus on moving sewage away from the river. Meanwhile, the newly formed Thames Conservancy, charged with maintaining the river, has worked to keep the waters in line with the demands of commercial shipping. And to accommodate the newer, larger ships, the river needed to be dredged. At the beginning of 1868, dredging work was underway in the Thames, with the aim of improving its navigation. Apparently, much of the material removed from the riverbed was used as ballast to stabilize the boats. Yet there was one discovery that definitely didn't make it to the local shipyard. While working on the bed of the River Thames, the workers came across something extraordinary. It was a bronze helmet with two conical horns, unlike anything that had been discovered before in the region. Forged from two separate sheets of metal, one for the front and one for the back, the helmet was held together by a series of neat rivets. Interestingly, both sides of the helmet were decorated in repousse style, a type of creative process that involves hammering the back of a sheet of metal to create a raised pattern. Using this ancient technique, the bronze had been embossed with a striking design. The designs were apparently in the style of the Latin culture, representative of an Iron Age people who lived in Britain from 250 to 50 BC. Additionally, the helmet was decorated with 5 bronze studs, with space for a 6th missing. And according to experts, the embellishments had once housed decorations made of red stained glass. In addition to the work on the main body of the helmet, some additional parts had been riveted to create the finished piece. A sickle-shaped section of bronze had been added beneath the front sheet, while binding and clasps had been used to strengthen the edges of the cap. Meanwhile, each horn was made from a single sheet of copper alloy and capped with a terminal pin. On both sides, the helmet was equipped with circular fittings, perhaps designed to hold a cheek pad or some kind of chin strap. And connecting the two frames was a row of decorative rivets running through the helmet and surrounding the base of both horns. Finally, the edges were dotted with a series of small holes that might once have held a lining in place. By the time the helmet was recovered from the river, the bronze had turned a dull shade of green. However, it would once have been polished with a bright shine. And at nearly 2 feet in circumference and weighing around 500 grams, it must have been a truly impressive piece. In March 1868, the Thames Conservancy loaned the discovery to the British Museum. And over the years, experts have been able to piece together a picture of who might have created the helmet and why. Apparently, they believe it dates from around 150 BC, towards the latter part of the British Iron Age. Interestingly, the helmet is too thin and delicate to serve any useful protective purpose. Most believe it was created for use in ceremonies instead. Additionally, the hood portion of the piece is small, making it unlikely that it was worn by an adult warrior. Alternatively, it may have been created to sit on the head of a statue. Nicknamed the Waterloo helmet, this piece has come to occupy a unique position in British archaeology. You see, it's only the third Iron Age helmet ever found on English soil, along with the Merrick helmet, discovered in an 18th century collector's armory, and the Canterbury helmet, recovered from a meadow in Kent in 2012. However, none of these other helmets have horns. In fact, the Waterloo helmet is the only horned Iron Age helmet ever discovered in Europe, despite making numerous appearances in contemporary works of art across the region. For example, a sculpture from 55 BC. In Orange, France, it depicts men wearing horned helmets, although they are curved rather than straight. Similarly, a cauldron discovered in Gundestrup, Denmark, in 1891, is decorated with a figure wearing another horned helmet. The find apparently dates back to around 150 BC. These horns are also curved, however, although they end in rounded knobs rather than spikes, much like those of the Waterloo helmet. Although the Waterloo helmet is the only known example of its kind, its aesthetic had a far-reaching impact on artistic representations of the era. Indeed, it is now common for Iron Age men to be shown wearing horned helmets, despite there being little evidence to suggest that they were common. Strangely, the helmet is not the only archaeological anomaly that has been recovered from Britain's riverbeds over the years. In 1857, for example, just over a decade before the discovery of the Waterloo helmet, another startling discovery was made by workers dredging the Thames, this time in the vicinity of London's Chelsea Bridge. Nicknamed the Battersea Shield, this decorated sheet of bronze is often considered one of the most remarkable examples of the era's craftsmanship ever discovered in Britain. Again designed in the Latin style, it is thought to date from 350 to 50 BC, potentially making it even older than the Waterloo helmet. And even earlier, in 1827, another shield was recovered from the River Witham in Lincolnshire, England, about 150 miles north of the River Thames. Thought to date from around 400 BC, this piece also boasts the familiar Latin flourishes. Furthermore, he once wore a leather coat of arms in the shape of a boar. But is there any connection between these Iron Age discoveries recovered from rivers many miles away? According to some experts, the location of these pieces implies that they were once thrown into the water as religious offerings. But if that was indeed the original purpose of the Waterloo helmet, it is now enjoying a second life. In 1988, it was permanently donated to the British Museum, where it is still on display. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.